Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And as always, I have a wonderful guest with me today, but this guest is extra special for many reasons, and you're going to find out why. Her name is Lauren Boyd. She is a lifelong dancer, teacher, competitor, and role model. She is also a licensed cosmetologist, licensed massage therapist. Oh, and just let me interrupt myself. She has hands of gold. She's a professional makeup artist as well as an active model and the founder and owner of Luna Salon and Day Spa. Lauren is also my friend, my esthetician, which is why my skin looks so darn good. Lauren, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is such an honor. I've been wanting to get you on the show for a very long time. Number one, you're one of my favorite people. And we met in a really unusual circumstance. So let's just talk about your lifelong dance experience. So let's just start there.
Yes.
How did you get involved in dance in the first place?
So when I was about 3 years old, we were visiting my grandmother in California, and it was a time when the Bob Fosse, all that jazz series was like really popular. It was being promoted on all the commercials.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just watching it and I was hooked. Every time I saw the commercial, I would drop everything and go into this trance and watch all these dancers.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started picking up on the movement and trying to repeat the movement. And I was trying to get my parents' attention with it. And they just were not paying attention. So I got really upset and I knocked over a plant. I knocked over one of my grandmother's plants and was like, pay attention. Like, you have to see what I'm doing here. So my parents did pick up on the cue and I was enrolled in kind of like a ballet class. It back when Gove Middle School was around in Colorado. It's since
Mm-hmm.
gone now, and just started there. And I've never left the community, the dance
Mm-hmm.
community, since that point. I've always loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been between. I was with Carol over at Gove for years, and then when I was about 6, I moved over to Cleo Parker Robinson for a couple of years.
Oh, awesome.
And yeah, she's a very incredible person and she has a great studio. The one thing I love about her is whenever I see her, she has never forgotten me. She takes
Mm-hmm.
such a high interest, not just in her professional dance company,
Mm-hmm.
but her dance students that just attend to learn.
Mm-hmm. She
Um,
is a very authentic woman. I have
she
taken
is.
classes at her studio, not from her, but have gone to a lot of her performances and stuff. And she is just so genuine and so really interested in
Yes.
everybody.
Oh, big time. Big time. And I've had a lot of respect for that because she knows who has built her business and she doesn't forget that,
Mm-hmm.
especially at the large scale that she has created it from
Mm-hmm.
scratch,
Mm-hmm.
truly. I wanted to, I started to see other girls in my class compete. So I ended up leaving as much as I didn't want to at a young age. And I went over to Hill Academy of
Mm-hmm.
Dance, led by Kathleen Hill, and started competing at 12, which was very fun. She had a specific dance company. Sometimes they would travel and
Mm-hmm.
do little events throughout some of the summers, which was really cool, and just really extensive training. And that's where I got extra motivated to really take it to the next level. Is I had a dance teacher who was 6'2" and just stunning. She was a Nuggets cheerleader for a long
Mm-hmm.
time. Her name is Tiffany Johnson. And I saw her because I was always told, you're going to be so tall, you're going to be so tall. And I fell in love with her and I was like, I'm going to move like that girl.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
And
going to move.
especially, yeah, when you're in ballet, tall
Yeah.
really isn't a wonderful feature to have. They usually want the smaller girls, the tiny ones or whatever. But I have got to tell you, the taller dancers to me are far more beautiful because those lines in the legs just go on and on and on. And seeing you dance, in a different format, it's just so stunning. All of that length that just goes on and on.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that because sometimes it's very hard as a tall person because I'm 6'1".
Mm.
And it took me a long time. It wasn't until I was about, I would say, 17 years old that I started to find my body in space. I just kind of felt like a lanky mess on
Uh-huh.
stage.
Uh-huh.
So it was nice to have the guidance from someone taller, because even though I felt that way sometimes, it was
Mhm.
clean that I
Mhm.
give myself credit for
Mhm.
compared to that time frame. And the ballet world is very interesting. I do believe it's the gateway for so much. Any other dance that you take, if you've had that background, and believe me, I'm a ballet dropout. I've been in and out of ballet classes. It is a love-hate relationship with that particular technique, but it is the gateway to so much. And I think
Mhm.
that in turn has made me a good pole dancer too.
Mhm.
And it
Absolutely.
really,
Yeah, you're right. I mean, if you have any ballet under your belt, it helps you with every single thing that you do in life.
yeah.
And
And
I've been dancing for 40 years and over 40 years. And I started when I was 19 or
right.
20, and I
And
still
look at how
dance.
well you still move.
Well, I do now, but there were definitely points in my life where I wasn't moving well at
Yeah.
all and where I had like terrible injuries and stuff too. But that's another thing. I think that my ballet background actually helped me, you know, recover from the injuries because I had that kind of mindset. It's a completely different, or it could go the other way as well. You never know, depending on, where you're at.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, mobility and flexibility and mobility, you see, every news station, or when there's something done on TV about your
Hmm.
body, that's like the most important that they talk about, especially in the realm of aging. And I
Hmm.
see, being a massage therapist and seeing so many different body types, the people who move versus the people who do not, it's extensive, and they show their age way more
Hmm.
than they should because they're
Hmm.
not implementing some form of mobility and flexibility
Hmm.
in with their workouts. Great, you can lift 400 pounds, good for you, but can you roll your ankles? Can you get on your
Hmm.
toes and hold it? And
Hmm.
basic stuff that really does matter
Hmm.
in the course of aging.
Hmm. So how then did you get into massage therapy?
It was not something I actually wanted to do. I approached my father. I did a semester at CU Denver right
Hmm.
after high school, and I went to a high school, and the workload was pretty intense. They threw us into a college workload our freshman year, which was
Oh,
its blessing and its curse. Because when I got to college, I was prepared for it. I was already used to that workload.
right.
But when I got there, I was wore out. I was
Hmm.
so wore out from just busy work and unnecessary math and subjects I just didn't like, but it's required in order to proceed forward.
Hmm.
And I did a semester, and I looked at my dad and I said, I don't want to waste your time and money in this. I don't, most certainly, when it's time for me to get a student loan, because we had our deal there,
Hmm.
to I don't know what I want to do. I look at this career list and nothing interests me. And I felt like I had I had auditioned for a lot of dance troupes right off the bat out of high school. My parents were very engaged in trying to help me make a career out of that. And of
Hmm.
course, I was running into the problem of being too tall.
Hmm.
I was a strong enough dancer, but I was too tall, and I was too tall to partner. And I wasn't quite strong enough, because I feel in the early 2000s, dance is when it started to become more gymnastic.
Mm.
And I feel like that the dance world has shifted so much the past 20 years with being a little bit more trick oriented
Hmm.
versus actual dancing. Like, you watch Fred Astaire, you watch Gene Kelly, and they're just smooth. And so, I told my dad, I said, I know I need to do something. I just don't know what that is.
Hmm.
And he said, well, you did your friend's makeup for prom and you seem to do a good job. Maybe you'd be good at doing hair and skincare. And I'm like, I can barely comb my own hair, and you want me to do someone else's? What? So we explored some schools, and I shadowed at some places and found that I was actually quite drawn to it more so than I thought.
Hmm.
And then in the course, in the middle of beauty school, my dad goes, you should combine modalities and think about massage school. You have really strong hands.
Hmm.
And I mean, I got joked around. People called me man hands when I was younger, but now, I mean, they're my bread and butter for every
Hmm.
single aspect of my work.
Hands of gold. I said it already.
Well, thank you. So that's kind of where I ended up. I wasn't super excited about massage school, and I must admit it was a painful process to go through, mostly because I was so young. Most people that
Mm,
go to massage school, quite frankly, go in their late 20s, early 30s. My class was filled with people. I was the youngest in class, easily with one other girl by 10 years.
wow.
And then the oldest person was 65 years old. That was in
Oh,
massage school. And I was a little burnt out because I did at one point, just so I could finish the programs when I wanted to, I was doing beauty school and massage school at the same time
ugh.
while trying to test for my state boards for the cosmetology license. So the process of school was a little bit rough, but it's really intertwined so much. And I make it a point to try and do 1 to 2 pieces of education per
Mhm,
year. So I just kind
mhm,
of fell into that. And then when I really went hard at skincare, to be able to combine all that and create a really luxurious spa experience
mhm.
is where that all came together. And I've been licensed for 17 years now, which
Wow.
most people don't last 10, frankly.
Mhm, mhm. I can see that. It's a rough industry to be in.
Hmm. Yeah, it is. It doesn't pay like it should. And some of these
Mhm,
chain places, what they do, unless you go right to work for yourself and just kind of hustle and get another job, these chain places can take advantage of you.
mhm.
And you can't physically, I don't care how much you love it, how good at it you are, you should not be doing 7 to 8 massages a day.
Ugh,
No, no. And that's where people get burned out is, oh my gosh, I'm making $60 an hour or $50 an hour plus my tips. And they go hard at it. And then they're fried. And not just from the physical aspect of what you're giving to your client, but the energetic exchange, and which
right.
does not get talked about a lot, is there is a
Mhm,
huge energy exchange. And sometimes there are people that are come in and they are energy suckers.
mhm,
Or maybe they're going through a tragedy or a death or some mental health issues that they don't have to say anything to you,
mm. But
but
you
you're
know
gonna
it.
feel that
You
energy.
feel
They
it.
don't, they can't hide the energy.
Mhm,
And then, I purposely, I think why I've lasted so long is I don't typically do more than 2 a day. It's either
mm,
1 90-minute massage or 2 60-minute massages a day.
mhm.
Because that's a lot for, I know my energy and I know past that, I can't give 100% to my client if it goes past that.
So were you always that sensitive, that body aware, and that even emotionally aware and intuitive? Or is this something that developed as you were starting, like going through beauty school and going through massage school and then starting to build a practice? Um, well, you actually started working for other people first before you went out on your
Yes.
own, correct? So did you always have that skill, that life skill, or was this something that came through the training
It
and
was
through
something that was
working with people?
definitely developed over time. In school, I studied under Mark Matten back when Massage Therapy Institute of Colorado was in place.
Mm,
It's now just the acupuncture school. He shut it down after the pandemic. And
mm.
it was interesting the way he structured class. So the first 4 hours of our day was just theory,
Mhm.
how the body works, very scientific. We'd have an hour break. He would lecture for an hour and then he would make us do Tai Chi. And here I am, my 20-year-old self is like, this is stupid. Like, what am I doing here? Moving with these people. And of course, my classmates, I was so different from them. I was like a Paris Hilton walking into Woodstock. Very hippie. Everybody's very grounded, but they're a lot older. So they've had more life experience. And I thought it was the dumbest thing, but it did wake me up to then begin. We would spend
Mhm,
2.5 hours on body work, our 30 minutes of theory, and then we would exchange with each other to work on the
mhm,
techniques. And it wasn't one day till I was working a clinic. In the school clinic, we had to work a weekend once a month,
mhm.
credit hours. And this woman came in that just had off energy. And I found it very challenging. I'm like, why is she so hard to work on? And that night, I came home and I got violently ill. I was
Wow.
vomiting like crazy. And the next week when I went to class, I told my teacher about it. And he's like, this is why, if you haven't figured it out, I'm taking Tai Chi and making you bring it, not just for your body mechanics around the table, but how to move that energy. And that's when I had that moment. So it did happen young, but it was a full
Mhm.
on physical experience for me of how we learn to move it and cope with it. And even taking the times, like I had a client, unfortunately, who lost her mother, and I just sensed that energy without her telling me. And finally, I just put my hands on her. And you had something happen, and she just burst into tears.
Aw.
And that is when I started to become aware of just that exchange.
Mhm. And how important it is.
How important it is, how
Mhm.
important it is. And there are some days it's really hard to move the energy. And that's
Mhm.
where like pull is really nice to go to at the
Mhm.
end of my day and release what I've struggled to take in and not release properly,
Mhm.
especially if maybe I'm tired or, I'm a little burnt out. Moving that energy in a massage can be tricky.
Mhm. So, okay, I've got a question for you then. So then, was it after that conversation that you had with your instructor regarding that you decided, okay, Tai Chi, it really isn't stupid?
Yeah. And that's when I started to like really hone in and focus on it. And
Mhm.
it just came from being young.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
just came from being young. And I just remember like all the weird, the new breathing stuff was really weird to me. And I had never, to this day, I still haven't even taken a yoga class,
Mhm.
but I have been actually learning a lot about breath in
Mhm.
conjunction with anxiety and how you
Mhm.
manage it. And when I hone in on it and when I keep my mechanics around the table really good, it's incredible. One, how the person feels. That's just
Mhm.
really grateful that you took the time. But
Mhm.
two, when I've moved it properly, how I feel as
How you
well.
feel. Mhm. And your
Yeah.
energy level going home at the end of the day.
And I think your average massage school, dare I say, doesn't always talk about that exchange.
Mhm.
It's kind of
Well,
like, let's get you in, let's get you out, let's get you working. And
yeah.
'cause there are programs that are 5 to 7 months,
Mhm.
and mine was a full year and a half.
Mhm.
And I'm really, now that I look back on it, even though it had its moments where it's very torturous,
Mhm.
I think that's the only reason why I've lasted 17 years.
Mhm. Well, I went to physical therapy school and they never addressed that.
No, and it
Never.
is.
It's like, okay, but I was kind of used to that because I had been a respiratory therapist for almost 20 years before I went to PT school. So instead of working with the energy, what we were really good at was pushing everything aside so we could
Hmm.
function in very high stress situations. And I have to tell you, it wasn't healthy.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not.
So you've mentioned the magic words at least twice. So let's go there. Pole dancing.
Yes.
Okay, so the audience knows this is how I met beautiful, lovely Lauren was through Pole at the Pole studio. Actually, we met at Estee's house, I think, before I ever saw you at Studio 360, and we're going to give them a plug a little bit later too, because it's a fantastic studio. How in the world did you end up pole dancing?
You
Because I always
know,
find it everybody comes to pole for a different reason, and I just
and
love
that's
to
my
hear.
favorite part. As a teacher, learning what drew students in,
Mhm.
because their story is always so unique and so incredible, especially with all the different body shapes and sizes and backgrounds we see. For
Ages.
me, um, I was, it's no secret, I have been married and divorced. I was married at 22 and divorced by the time I was 28, just kind of young and dumb. And I had a really great dance instructor job there that unfortunately my ex husband kind of tainted. And as much as I love dance, I couldn't go back for a while.
Mhm.
And then everything just kind of fell apart and I ended up back here. And little did I know after the course of, 2 extensive years just on therapy for my divorce alone, that I needed to bring dance back into like really like fully heal me and carry forward. But I
Mhm.
wasn't interested in going back to contemporary, especially watching how much it shifted. I was intimidated to take a class. And then I thought, oh, well, even at 28 years old, I was like, oh, I'm the old girl in class now if I try and take a class, because there was no really in between until I feel like the past few years for
Mhm.
people in their 20s, 30s, 40s for classes. And then it was like 60 plus for ballet classes, which I was a little bit more advanced than that, but I wasn't quite ready to go back with teenage girls either.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did kind of start shopping around and didn't like it. And then I was having cocktails with a friend of mine, and we were just dancing around her condo. And I said, "Girl, I wanna let out this like really sexy side, this stripper side." I said, "But I don't want to be a stripper."
Mm-hmm.
And she just looked at me and she goes, "You know, it's a whole fitness trend now, right? You don't have to be a stripper to pole dance anymore." And I was blown away. Blown away. And I'm very late to social media and certain things like that. Like, I've
Mm-hmm.
always been late to the game on technology. So I had no idea there was this huge plethora and this huge community for it. So she put me in touch with Brittany Fellows, who's now one of their like lead hard candy dance instructors there for the low flow.
Mm-hmm.
She used to babysit her. She's like, "Let me put you in touch with her, and I bet you should go take a class with you." I said, "Great." So she was super friendly on Facebook. We had this really nice message exchange. And I had happened to do a dance photo shoot um, 2 weeks prior and started posting the pictures. And shortly before I even went to the first class, she said, "Okay, real talk. You clearly have a dance background. I already know you're going to like pole.
Mm-hmm.
The owner of the studio was looking for floor teachers. So get a position there so you can have free membership. I'm just going to put that little bug in your ear."
Mm-hmm.
And I took my first class and was totally like, "Oh, this is special." And the community of people was really, really got to shift my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
My first class experience, which I'm not proud of, but it was good, it happened. The way this particular studio had set up the intro class is they did it right after the level 4 or 5 girls. And of
Oh,
course, most studios at the end of class allow you to freestyle and record yourself. And I totally went into skinny girl model mode, and there was a bigger girl in class. Um, and I automatically was like, "What is this girl think she's doing here?" I totally judged her. And I couldn't stop staring at her because I'm like, "Why is she here? What is she doing here?" I just was and just couldn't get over it.
mm-hmm.
And then she did her freestyle, and I could not take my eyes off of her. And I'm a pretty passive person at first. And I felt
Mm-hmm.
this odd need and very compelled to go up to her. And I just, "Hey, I judged you." And instead of having a very normal reaction of like, "Oh, okay, whatever," or, she easily just could have been rude back, she just smiled at me and she goes, "Thank you for your honesty." And I said, "You are beautiful dancing on the pole." And that's when I started to actually gain my own body acceptance, because I think
Mm-hmm.
modeling in the 90s and early 2000 time frames was
Right.
so bad.
Yeah.
It's some of the best modeling, but how these models were treated and what goes on. There's a book called The Ugly Business of Beautiful Women, and what was going on in that whole scene was appalling.
Mm-hmm.
Was appalling. And she really got me to shift my thinking surrounding that, not just personally, but other people and how they embrace stuff. And she had told me very personally she was on a weight loss journey to lose 100 pounds, and that she was 30 pounds down, and she had kept it off for 3 years. And she said, "Well, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it where I'm accepted," because she hated going to the gym.
Oh, yeah.
So do her own stuff at home and go to the studio, and to have this positive space to do it and keep it off
Mm-hmm.
because of the confidence and the community of people cheering her on. I mean, the gym can be a very intimidating place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I continued on. I taught, just to have my membership, and continued to dance in sub classes there. And then 2018, I certified with an international certification through Elevated
Mm-hmm.
to teach the first 3 levels of pole. And then I
Mm-hmm.
started competing in 2018 as well, and have not looked back since.
Mm-hmm.
I've got I've competed 8 times, and I have 4 second place wins and 3 first place wins. And I'm looking to go to the Arnold in March. So,
Wow.
yeah,
You go, girl.
yeah, I'm excited.
So when you walked into that class for the very first time, did you ever expect that one class would lead to this kind of a journey.
No, not at all. And what's incredible, and I don't know if you've had this experience personally as a dancer, I never felt like I fit in. Even I was there because I loved it, not always there for the people
Mm-hmm.
that were in class. I was there because I genuinely loved it. And I just didn't worry about the people, but I was very out of place.
Mm-hmm.
Just even looks wise, I was 5'11" by the time I was 14.
Jeez.
And already kind of struggling with hair stuff and school stuff. That was my happy place to get away from what was happening in school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and pole's the one place where I've just seen so much more diversity compared to any other piece of dance where there's just this acceptance and love. And it was nice for the first time in my life to feel like I belonged in the
Mm-hmm.
place.
Well, it's
And that there was
really
no judgment.
hard not to be supportive and in a loving, accepting community when you're dressed in a pole outfit.
Yeah.
You would never see that in a
You
dance
have to get
regular.
down to your skivvies to stick to that pole. There's
That's
no
right.
way it.
It's not that we enjoy taking our clothes off. It's just we really enjoy being able to stick to the pole and not sliding and crashing to the
Exactly.
ground. So I really
Exactly.
want to talk about that, the stigma, because even to this day, there's still such a stigma about pole and pole dancing and pole dancers. And
Mm-hmm.
if people would realize what went into it. I mean, it is the most difficult thing I have ever done. I was a downhill skier for 40 years. I still take ballet. It's been over 40 years doing that. I've done 20 years of a very intense martial art. Nothing is as hard as pole. But and it's frustrating, but it's so much fun.
Mm-hmm. And isn't that the funny thing? We can be in so much pain and we
Yeah.
can be so annoyed or so frustrated if we didn't hit what we wanted to hit. And it's very much like, okay, oh, that sucked. Oh my God, my butt was kicked. I'll see you next week. It's like that almost every week.
I know. It's like, oh my
And
goodness,
if I don't do
everything
it for a
hurts.
week or two, I'm like, oh, I miss everybody.
I know. It is. Well, okay, now we're talking about missing everybody when we're not there. And that's a great segue to this little piece of pole heaven. And that just came into my mind. I didn't think about that. But that's basically what it is. The studio that we go to, the studio that we train at, Lauren teaches quite a few classes. I teach the body rehab class on Sunday, which cracks me up. If you would have told me I'd be doing that when I first started pole, I would have laughed, Yeah, it's like, there's no
I
way this is,
know, right? It's taken you in a very unexpected place.
it
Just,
really, really does.
yeah,
But it's such an amazing studio because there's no mean girl energy in it. And
there's
to
not.
have,
And if there is, either we help you work through that or you're out the door. Like
right.
it's not tolerated.
Mm-hmm. And just, and we were talking a little bit before the recording, that is so unusual especially in a dance studio. I mean, believe me, even at my age, when I go to a ballet class, there's mean girl energy. And it's like, really, ladies, how old are we? It's not
Right.
like New York City Ballet is going to be calling us next week.
Right.
Everybody lighten up and just have a good time. But
Right.
every single time I go to Poland, it's like, oh, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Okay, I'll go. And, I have a very special friend. We text each other all the time. Are you going to go? I don't know. I don't feel like it. I don't feel like it either. And it's like, instead of being accountability partners, it's like we talk each other out of it. But then it's like, well, we have to go. We'll feel better if we do. And every single time, even though I couldn't do anything or I'd be sliding all over the place, still it's such a great experience. You're moving energy, you're moving your body, the music is incredible, and it's just that sense of community that I
It's,
think a lot of studios do not have.
yeah. And it's so special. And it's a shame that we can't implement that into other dance studios.
I know. And I think
Very
if other
unusual.
people would come and just experience, what it's like doing a class at our studio, I think it would maybe change a few minds and maybe a little bit more, that maybe the energy in their schools will change. I don't know. But anyway, let's talk about it. It's Studio 360.
Yes.
And the owner is someone who is we just love her. Her name's Jen West. And she has done an amazing job building this incredible community.
She has. She
Mhm.
has. In such a beautiful way. And I will tell you, with the exception of one studio experience, whenever I travel, I try to
Mhm.
do 2 international trips a year.
Mhm.
And I always try and support a local pole studio,
Mhm.
even with a language barrier.
Wow.
It is that same vibration.
Mhm.
It is the same vibration. And they're so excited to just have a body in there, to dance with them and hang out. I've done it in Greece. I've done it in Canada. I've done it all across the US. I'm going to head out to Chicago and see an old friend out there who opened a studio. Texas, California, New
Wow.
York. It has all been that across the platform vibe of not like you would expect when you go to other dance studios, of that
Right.
cattiness.
Mhm.
And it's so cool because to see that on a bigger scale and not just one place.
Mhm. It is, it's an amazing community. And I don't know if it's because it is such a challenging sport, because I consider it an art and a sport. Um,
Agreed.
or the fact that, we're pretty much half clothed,
Yeah.
um, and it kind of, to me, pole just levels the playing field in a lot of different ways. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll see other women doing things that are impossible for me to do, and it's like, well, I could get really frustrated with that. But then on the other hand, I can do things that I think are easy and other people think are very difficult. So we can actually kind of modify things for our specific body type, for the way we're built, the way we're made, but anybody can do it.
Yeah. It can be hard to convince people just starting. I don't know if you've come across that as a teacher, but it can be sometimes hard to convince people to start because it's, well, I have no core upper body strength. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter.
Hmm.
Oh, what about my
Hmm.
leg? Doesn't matter.
Hmm. Mhm. I know when I go to ballet class, and I don't go very often, but of course, I'd been gone for quite a long time with the pandemic. And even after the live classes, resumed, I still, didn't want to go back because it was so easy just to come down my stairs and do an online class. But then when I finally did go back, it was like, my goodness, it's been 3 years. I'm going to fall all over the place. It's going to be terrible. And I could not believe how strong I was in ballet, because I
Mhm.
then had the upper body strength to be able, my balances had never been that good. And of
Right.
course, everybody was shocked because I hadn't danced in 3 years in a ballet studio. And I kept saying, it's pole, it's pole. And all of the women would say, oh, I can't do pole. I have no upper body strength. I haven't, well, you're going to get it.
Right. Exactly. You're going to gain it. It's no different than going to the gym. If you can't raise or lift a certain amount of weight, okay, you start lower and you work
Mm-hmm.
your way up. It's all still very gradual in the realm of getting your body to do what you want it to do.
Mm-hmm. But it's funny because to me, pole is a lot more functional.
Yeah.
I have the thing about gyms. I mean, I'm allergic to running, and the thought of going to a gym makes me break out in hives. But going to, a dance studio or a pole studio is a whole different animal, and I'm fine with that. But it's functional, because
It
even
really
as
is.
you're putting your groceries away, that upper body strength really comes in handy, and it prevents osteoporosis. It prevents that dowager's hump because you have to use those muscles.
Right.
Otherwise, you'll just slip off the pole. But yeah, anybody can do it.
Yeah. It's awesome. Well, I have a question for you, if I can flip
Sure.
the roles. As a teacher, because we see the other part of pole that doesn't get talked about a lot is the healing aspect. Um, and it's, I think that's really hard to demonstrate. I know some people have tried to film it or do documentaries around it that haven't, for me, come off the way that they should as to what it really is.
Hmm.
And it's interesting too to see these moments being on the choreography side and teaching
Hmm.
true levels of like having that moment of that shy person that finally just lets it all go. And it's
Hmm.
really hard not to run up and cheer and scream, because you don't
Hmm.
want to embarrass them.
Right, right.
At the same time, on just so many different stories of what brought them there. And
Hmm.
so So as a teacher, what do you think about that? How do you notice that? How does that make you
Actually, yeah, I think about that a lot, because especially with my martial arts background and, the healing power of the martial art in my own personal experience, and then working with other students, especially women when they come to the dojo. Everybody has a reason for coming to the dojo. You just don't wake up one day and say, "Hey, I think this is going to be a great idea." Maybe some people do,
right?
especially when they're younger, but you typically when you're in your 40s, that's not the reason why you're going to martial arts. And it's the same thing with pole. It's, a lot of women that I've talked to in the studio, and I've been at two different studios, another one besides 360, and a lot of them have a reason for coming, that maybe it was their therapist or counselor that said, "Why don't you try this as a way to reconnect with your body, reconnect with your femininity, your sexy self?" And of course, a lot of them at first were like, "Are you out of your mind? That's not
Mhm.
what I want to do." But there is something very organic, very visceral about that movement, even though it's not considered natural movement to hang on a pole. Well, historically speaking, we did climb trees and, pick fruit from,
We moved our body.
yeah, exactly. We had to survive. We really had to move our body in a lot of different ways so we could survive. But even once you get to a certain level, then that you can do a lot of the movements on the pole. I don't like to use the word tricks because to me, there's nothing, the little stigma with tricks, but to me, it's not a trick. It's a technique.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
have to know what you're doing to be able to do some of these moves. But even when you have a little tiny bit of technique under your belt or at the pole, then you can start expressing yourself. And I think that self-expression, people who would come in and they would start out, just walking around the pole with their head down and just embarrassed and, baggy clothes and all that stuff. And that's fine. You have to start somewhere. And then a
Right.
couple weeks later, they're just, swinging around and starting to feel more comfortable in their bodies. It's really a beautiful thing to watch.
It
And so
is.
that's just the healing power of being able to look at yourself in the mirror and love the body that you see.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
agree.
yeah. I think it's
It's
really
interesting.
it's very, very fun to see. And, I mean, I don't teach the pole classes. Hopefully I will someday teach the lower levels, but I see it a lot in the body rehab classes because a lot of people will come in after they've been beating themselves up all week, and
Right.
then being able to kind of sink into their bodies and realize, taking that time, that quiet time, to realize how truly magnificent and magical our bodies are. And, we are, especially as women, we are so good at criticizing ourselves.
Oh man.
I mean, the body
Ah,
shaming and, maybe it came from another place, but the judgment. And pole to me gave me, even, at my age, a way to really love my body.
yep.
And yeah, that's pretty amazing to be able to say that when you're over a certain, milestone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I completely understand that. And it can be so unexpected. I don't think people think, having a previous dance background and model background, that people expected that I would have some issues surrounding that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, and just all the different ones where, we don't care. Okay, great, your butt's hanging out, looks good.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
you
Okay,
know
there is one thing you will never hear anywhere else but in a pole studio.
right,
Hey, those shorts makes your butt look great.
right,
You don't
right.
hear that in ballet class.
No,
No.
no. The big thing too is what that was very unexpected when I started to compete, was what it was like at competition. And
Mhm.
that vibe and that energy carries on into some of the most competitive competitions in the pole
Mhm.
community. And the way
Mhm.
that I mean, it's just true to what sportsmanship should be compared
Mhm.
to a ballet audition, or
Mhm.
a normal dance competition. The way these dancers treat each other
Mhm.
is awful.
Mhm.
It's awful. And to not to see such a different and moving
Mhm.
experience each time I go to competition. I mean,
Mhm.
when I get my fiance to cry, you just know. And he like to for men to see it, who are
Mhm.
more often than not. Of course, we have men in the studio,
Uh-huh.
But your average man who doesn't do something like that, who just thinks he's coming to see a bunch of sexy girls dance, to
Uh-huh.
have this moving experience as an audience member who's not even backstage, I think
Hmm.
says a lot too.
Hmm.
Um, and that's what's one thing for people who do like to perform or in that industry or interested in it. I really encourage people not to be intimidated by it, because the
Hmm.
love that is at these competitions is
Hmm.
awesome. And having done 8 of them, I've seen some really crazy things happen.
Oh, I'm sure you have.
And I have cried. I have cried like a little baby for these women I met that morning.
That's so funny. So, okay, so we both competed last October.
Yeah.
And so this just reminded me of this story. Because I thought it was so weird, but I guess in retrospect, maybe it wasn't. But when they were doing the award ceremony, and there were 3 women in my category, me and 2 other women from Studio 360. And
Mm-hmm.
so we were in the audience together, sitting together. And of course, we each one of us won an award. And when they were saying, okay, and they said our names and stand up so the runner would bring the medal to us. And when they said our names and we all 3 stood up, and the woman just looked and she did a double take and she said, "Oh my God, you're sitting together?" And it was like,
Yeah.
is that illegal just because we're
Right.
competing in the same category? But she said, she's like, that was so unusual.
It
Yeah.
is. The things that happen are so beautiful there, and it's very unexpected. The girl that I tied with at that competition,
Hmm.
we watched the rest of the competition together, and I had no idea who she was. She was from a studio in Fort Collins.
Uh-huh.
And we ended up having this really nice conversation, and we were hugging each other, and people are like, but you just competed against each other.
Right.
And
Right.
I hate that, because it's like, well, why would you assume that I should just hate her
Yeah.
or dislike her, which is so tough. I've seen so many competitions growing up in the ballet world. If you get injured in an audition, the other dancers are snickering. They don't come to help you. And they're
Oh,
snickering. They're like, good, one person down. And the only person that might come to help you is the director to move you aside and put ice on whatever.
and
If
get
you
you
hit
out of the way.
or your leg, and just kind of get you out the way and tell you to call a doctor. And here it's like people that don't know you swarm towards you. And it's so fantastic. I had this experience in Seattle because I decided to to compete in Seattle. I don't know anybody there at
Hmm.
this competition, but it's so you can hear some music, you can see some costumes. And it's the one thing about the pole community too is it's just so easy to make chit chat. I can ask a question or give a woman a compliment instead of like, oh, okay, thanks, why is this weird girl talking to me? It's, oh yeah, I got these online at this website, they were on
Hmm.
sale. Like it's a totally different experience. And there was
Hmm.
a girl, I was getting ready, I was 3 numbers away from competing my first piece, and there was a girl competing for her 11-4 championship, and she fell. She was at the top of a 12-foot pole, and she slipped out of a move. She thankfully caught herself before she really hit the floor and tried to keep going, and then she just ran off stage and started crying, rightfully so. I
Wow.
have no idea who this girl is. I just grab her and I just hug her. I'm like, you know what? I'm really sorry that happened, but I'm really glad you're okay. And, there's 2 other girls that come up, hey, are you okay? And that was like the first thing that was happening.
Uh-huh.
And what was even cooler is the lead judge actually took the microphone and she said, hey, we're running ahead of schedule today. If you can pull it together in 10, 15 minutes, we'll let you perform. We know how hard you worked. I grabbed some girl's bag of makeup that I didn't know, and I'm like, you're going to take some deep breaths. We're going to Elizabeth Taylor this. You're going to back out there. So here I have this girl happened to be from Canada that was competing. We had another girl from Canada come over who was adjusting her costume and getting tissue. This other girl from New York that came to compete who's fixing her hair. I'm putting on this, I don't know whose makeup this is. So hopefully it was
I
clean
guess
and
this had to have been before COVID then.
oh yeah, this was
Okay.
2019, November of 2019, just when things were starting to get crazy.
Okay.
And we're just standing there and we're like, we're going to be here. If you decide you want to walk off stage again, we'll be here. And so she managed to get back on stage, do the piece. the judges turned around and were like, everybody get up, and they were clapping for her. And I remember Ben texted me and he's like, I'm not crying, you're crying. He's like, why can't women always treat each other like that? I'm like, well, I don't know. And some of the fiercest competitions that happen here with some of these level 5 girls, it's not oftentimes before all the COVID protocols, we would all gather on stage.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And you would find the competitors that were in the same category competing against each other, sitting on stage with each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
And it's so magical.
So I want to give you the flip side of this. It's just a memory that popped into my head when you were talking and explaining this, especially like, at a ballet audition, if somebody gets hurt and everybody's going, oh yeah. This happened when I was 27. Of course, I was by no means a professional dancer. This was just in a regular dance class, a ballet class. And it was huge. There had to be, maybe 40 people in the class. It was a huge, huge class and a huge
Yeah.
studio. And we were in groups of 4. We were doing a fairly simple combination across the floor. PK turn, soda, Bosque and soda, Bosque. So it was,
Yeah.
those two easy turns and then like a little jumping turn where you land on one foot. And I'm a sickler. I don't do it as much anymore, but I'm going across the floor with my group and I landed out of a soda Bosque turn and I landed instead of on my foot, on the side of my foot. I broke my foot. You could hear the bone snap and I went down like a sack of potatoes. And the girl who was dancing next to me, tiptoed over me and kept going. And the pianist kept playing and she's like, PK, soda Bosque. And when a dancer lands and falls, if they don't pop up right away, something's wrong. And
Right.
it took probably just a few seconds, but it seemed like a few minutes before one of my best friends ran over and grabbed my hand, said, oh my God, are you okay? And I said, get me out of here. I think I broke my foot.
Yeah.
And it was
I
just,
had a similar in high school. I rolled it enough that I had to boot it and do physical therapy. And I remember they just kept going.
uh-huh, uh-huh, yeah.
Oh, you're down. You're crying.
Yeah. Here's
Yeah.
the Kleenex. Or, hey, you're getting the floor wet. Stop crying, will you?
And I remember having to call the studio and tell them I had to opt out of training for 2 months. And the teacher's like, well, then you're not going to be ready for competition. What am I supposed to do? And I'm like,
oh my goodness. Oh yeah, it's all about her, right? And competition.
good
Well,
talk.
let's segue into skincare because I really want to talk about that.
Oh, give me all your questions, Cheryl. Give me all the things, all the questions.
Well, I
Love to
really
talk
don't have that many questions because I see you and you answer all my questions when I'm there. But skincare is so important and everybody knows this. But I love the way that you always say that I think of 80% of skincare is done at the home.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Yes.
do an incredible job of educating your clients and giving them tips what to do, especially for their specific types. So just tell us a little bit about your practice and how you work with people, and especially for people who are local that are listening to this so they can find you and experience the magic of Lauren.
Yes, I want all the things. I want all the people. So I want to back up. Not everybody knows about skincare.
Ah,
Not everybody knows about it. Let's think about how, as young girls, if I can safely say, how we learned about taking care of our hair and our face. For me, it was commercials.
mm,
Panty and Disney gave me very unrealistic expectations in life. I remember when they did their first African American commercial for black hair care products for Pantene Pro V. And I would watch that commercial any chance I got. And I remember saving my hard-earned babysitting money to go to the store and buy that. And I get out of the shower, I try to do all the things, and I look like a disaster. I look like a disaster. And I remember coming downstairs and like, this product is crap, Dad. I don't look like that pretty model in the TV. And I think about how we learn about makeup and skincare and hair care and all that. And it's either commercials or, if we're fortunate enough, someone who kind of comes and steps in and talks about it.
Mhm.
And now we have stuff like Instagram, which is a blessing and a curse.
Mhm.
I really struggle with Instagram, which I'm working on getting to engage mine more, because one, the people that are on there usually aren't licensed or certified to be talking about skincare.
Mhm.
Two, a product company is paying them to promote it because they have X amount of followers.
Mhm.
Three, they're almost always using a filter. And some of these filters are so good that you don't always know unless you know what to look for.
Right.
And when our young children and our young people scroll through this, they don't always think about that filter until they're probably staring at it too long, or to remind themselves. They just swipe through it, which is really dangerous, because then they start using products that are backed by someone they liked, and that's not ideal for their skin, which in turn can
Mhm.
sometimes cause more problems for their
Mhm.
skin. So
Mhm.
I encourage people, when you follow people on Instagram or estheticians, is to specifically look for estheticians and people who have spent the money on the education to understand and work with skincare.
Mhm.
As far as the biggest question I get is, people always ask questions about products. And for some people, budget is a big thing in the course of that. More often than not, people end up investing because they
Mhm.
feel the difference, even just after one facial. But the
Mhm.
best way to look at products for my skincare people out there is, you've got your grocery store brands that you get at King Supers, Targets, pharmacies, which I encourage you to stay away from like the plague. If you're
Mhm.
going to do it, CeraVe, La Roche-Posay, or something from an organic market like Whole Foods, Sprouts, Vitamin Cottage, or
Mhm.
something that is, certified organic and clean.
So you don't
Um,
want to get the stuff with all the chemicals in it. Is that what you're saying?
you don't. And like I said prior, I do 1 to 2 pieces of education, if not more, per year. And one of
Mhm.
them, most recent, has been toxic beauty and learning about toxic beauty. And even though there's so many things that are FDA approved, the FDA is kind of irrelevant in this case.
Mhm.
And there are excess amounts of benzols, alcohol, wax, which actually ends up aging your skin faster. It may
Mhm.
feel good going on, and you might like look good, you have this good reflection, but it ages you faster.
Mhm.
And some of it has studies and tests have shown. I highly recommend watching the documentary Not So Pretty.
Mhm.
And toxic beauty
Mhm.
alters your hormones.
Mhm.
And
Okay,
people are
so
wondering why women are starting, menopause earlier than they should, and or having other hormonal problems. Part of it is what we're slapping on our skin.
right, so talk about and explain how that works, because I think a lot of people might not realize how incredibly absorbent our skin is. And
Our
everything
skin
you
is
put on your
straightforward.
skin gets
Mm-hmm.
into your blood.
Yep. And it's no different than when we ingest food. But our skin is the most absorbent organ in our body, and it's not hard. We put water on it, we watch our skin suck it up.
Mm-hmm.
Put cream on it, we feel our body absorb it.
Mm-hmm.
So you really have to be diligent as much as what you put on the outside of your body, including your hair,
Mm-hmm.
as much as it is when we ingest it.
Mm-hmm.
The big myth is, everybody's like, well, can I still eat my French fries and my cheese and my gluten and my skin will be fine? And so many people will say, oh, yeah, you can eat what you want. I'm like, no. What do you think when you eat a gross example is like, if someone has a whitehead on their face, and like, were you eating cheese? What does it look like when you extract it?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what you ate.
Mm-hmm.
So that matters. People say food doesn't matter, and it does. It
Mm-hmm.
really does. I think with teenagers, it's hard to convince them of that because their hormones are a bigger play at that time, more so than diet.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Well,
so
basically, really, you can eat whatever you want,
you
but
can,
but you're going to pay for it.
yeah, you're going to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it makes you sick internally, or maybe your skin has a reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
And people think more so their skin reactions are from outside sources, and it's not always the case. And some
Mm-hmm.
people it is.
And here's another little tidbit, that once you do clean up your diet, once you have something that really isn't good for you, you're going to know it right away.
Oh yeah.
because your body will start craving that healthy stuff, and it will
Absolutely.
just.
It's tapping into awareness.
Mhm, mhm,
It's very much, I eat these foods, I feel good. I eat these foods, I don't feel good.
mhm,
And that's kind of the way even I've looked at diet growing up. I was never a person to go on a diet. I think I tried some stuff in high school because that's what you're doing when
supposed to
you're
do.
learning about your body. I think that's very natural to do that, but it got broken down for me with my parents very clearly. This is healthy and what's going to make your stomach feel good, and this is not. You can eat as much of this as you want, but this maybe not so much. And then this is what happens. I feel like so often in regards to food, especially if you have a young girl that says, "Oh, I'm fat," and she's clearly not, it's, "Oh, no, you're fine." Instead of, "Well, what makes you feel that way? Let's talk about it.
Mhm,
Let's talk about food
mhm,
and what's going to make you feel that way. What's going to make you feel better versus this," and brushing it under the rug.
mhm,
No different with skin, really.
mhm,
And just like paying attention. The big thing I can tell people is, much like your nutrition boxes, when you go to the store, look at the label. If there are a bunch of things that you cannot pronounce, it's probably not going to be that great for you. And we
mhm,
all have our indulgences in everything, whether it be skincare, hair care, food. We all have our vices in that manner. But as an
mhm,
overall general thing, we want to maintain healthy. We only get one body in this life, and we have to
mhm,
take care of it on a
mhm,
full scale.
mhm. And that's actually very empowering,
It is.
and I'm all about that. So, Lauren, where can people find you?
I am located off Colorado in Exposition in the Denver area. The biggest way to, I'm honestly down the street from Shotgun Willie's Strip Club. That's a big reference for
That's right.
people when they're like, "Well, where's that area?" I'm like, down the street from the strip club. But the two big cold towers that are in town, I'm across the way. I'm tucked away in a little gray building, and I have my
Mhm,
own office suite.
mhm,
And I'm on the fifth floor. I love seeing new people. I love
mhm,
having the conversation about skincare. And one on one, everything is customized for what you're dealing with, whether it's acne, anti aging, needing more
mhm,
moisture in the skin, texture
mhm,
issues, whatever under the sun, and bringing importance to why it matters to take care of your skin long term.
mhm. And I'm going to have the all of your links in the show notes, but I really like for the guests to be able to tell people where they can find your website and how to find you on Instagram.
Absolutely. So Instagram, I'm bad about and just re-engaging in that, but it's Lauren of Luna Salon. And then my website is lunasalonanddayspa.com.
Mhm,
There's an online booking link right there. And
mhm,
each of my websites has a category where you can click on what you're looking for, and then
mhm,
descriptions of everything you need or might be interested in or want to try. If
mhm,
you're not sure, there's a new customer facial where you can go in, have you fill out some paperwork, and then we customize and figure out which one would be good for you as well.
mhm.
And yeah,
Okay, and one more thing, if people are not local, would they be able to contact you for like even do any kind of consultations
absolutely. We
online?
can do Zoom consultations. And what's nice about a lot of the skincare I carry is I
Mhm,
can get free, if not inexpensive, drop shipping if they want to
mhm,
support my business.
mhm,
Um, and ordering products and getting it drop shipped, and then checking in with people on where they're at with their skincare, what they're
mhm.
doing, and such. I completely offer that.
Okay, excellent, excellent. And I just want to give you a big shout out for your products as well as your wonderful skincare and facials. But your skincare products are absolutely fantastic. They really are, top notch. I mean, look at this.
Thank you.
It doesn't
Cleanliness
just happen.
matters, and
Hmm.
cleanliness matters in product. And that's where, people get intimidated by price when an esthetician kind of breaks down where you start. And your initial cost, if you're investing in a full kit, is going to be more expensive because it's everything up front.
Hmm.
However, because it's more natural, it's very
Hmm.
clean, it's highly concentrated, so you use less of it.
Hmm.
So, and it's a longer term investment. And what's good is, after the initial investment, your products are usually not running out at the exact same time. That's
Right.
very, so when you need something new, you can begin to get one product at a time to
Mhm.
replace that. And I think people get intimidated when they hear, oh my gosh, it's $200 or that's $300,
Mhm.
depending on what you do. I'm like, ah, but let's talk about how you would replace that after
Mhm.
the initial investment. And it
Mhm.
comes to anywhere from 30 to 120. If you're on more upscale skincare products,
Mhm.
that can really get pricey. But skincare also does not have to be expensive. And I think that's
Mhm.
another thing that people put in their brain, is that it has to be good. And that's not the case. You just
Mhm.
really want to hone in on quality of product.
Mhm. Okay. And oh, one more time before we sign off, I just want to give one more plug for Studio 360. And
Yes.
their website is definitely going to be in the show notes as well. So if anybody wants to come and dance with us, we would love to have you. If you're not
Yes. Come
local,
say
um,
hi.
yeah. And
We
if you're
get to
not local, if you're visiting Denver and you're in the area, you can come and visit. We get out of towners a lot to come and dance with us. So that's great.
yes,
So,
absolutely.
Lauren, thank you so much for being here. This has been fantastic. I've loved
Thank you.
having
It
you
was
on the
so
show.
fun.
Do you have any final little pearls of wisdom that you want to drop on the audience before we sign off?
Oh, I'm actually gonna, it's very random, but it's one of my favorite quotes that I learned is, in the course of, we go through all sorts of hard and crazy things in life. And I heard this quote once before my first competition, of they broke the wrong parts of me. They took off my wings, but they forgot I had claws. And just know that you can always climb, even if you fall, you can always climb back up, and you can
Oh,
find
beautiful.
where you want to be.
Mhm. That's absolutely beautiful. Thanks again, Lauren, for being here. You're awesome.
Thank you.
And
Yay.
everybody, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. Do check out Lauren's website, her Instagram. Do share this episode with everyone you know and love. You get a lot of really wonderful pearls of wisdom scattered throughout our conversation. But I really love that one at the end. And just remember, you can always climb. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.